The following program was made possible thanks to the generous support of our Kickstarter backers.
Well, first Holmes was born, then he got fat, bald, and tired.
Sup, Holmes?
Beware! Your host, Jonathan Ho!
Thank you so much, Sinistar. You terrifying mask of a demon of a friend. Randy, you know a thing about masked demon friends.
Oh, I do.
I do. You're working on the Friday the 13th game.
Yep, that guy right there, Jason.
Wow, there he is. And is he? I don't know how deep you are into the lore, because it seems to change now and again. He's been to hell, but he's been to the future. Is he a demon? Is he just an angry soul? Is he a zombie? What the heck is he?
I mean, back in the in the first movie, he was a kid, right? He was a human being. He progressively got more and more messed up as the movie series went on. So like right now, I guess around part 6 is kind of when he really went supernatural, right? Undead. He's the undead Jason. Part 7 and beyond just gets crazier and crazier. So he obviously has some mysterious powers to always return to life. He gets around like all not like that.
but as a worm, sometimes he'll become a worm. He'll possess a stranger. So he is a spirit of malevolence. Yeah, birthed from mysterious sources.
He magically appears in front of people after they think they've lost him, and they put a mile between them, them and him. So he's definitely has some powers. They're ill-defined, but yeah, he can and will kill you. He's like the ultimate predator.
Yeah. He teamed up with Freddy one time, and he's in Mortal Kombat, and now you are making a game with him. That is incredible.
He's coming back, and hopefully this will be a great game as opposed to the NES version, which was not so good.
Whoa! Ouch! Did you grow up playing the NES version?
I did. As you can see behind me, I got some 8-bit Jason stuff. And so I love the game, but I also hated it because it just wasn't what I wanted to be. First off, I wanted to be Jason in the game, right? Like I wanted there to be something I could do as Jason. But no, you're the counselors, and you're the wimpiest counselors ever. You die to slow moving zombies, and you throw rocks at wolves and those goddamn wolves, they'll kill you in a heartbeat.
Dude, I know a couple of game developers who remain nameless right now who know you're going to be on the show, and they were like, ask him if he would ever think about doing a 2D Friday the 13th game, maybe with a similar art direction, like bring back purple jumpsuits, green mask Jason, that kind of like creepy color scheme he had going there. It's a very day glow for someone who stalks people and kills them at night. It says maybe you'd want to work on something like that. That could be fun. Would you ever want to return to that kind of a thing?
Old Purple and Mint Voorhees needs to come back in some form or fashion. That aesthetic is just cool. It's like it's not scary whatsoever. But the scariest thing in the NES game was the title screen with the knife that flies in and into the mask. But that game, we wanted to remake something. Like when we were doing our Kickstarter back in October, November last year, we actually had one of our stretch goals was a retro remake or a demake of what we're doing right now. So that was up there on the list. That's been a wish on our end for forever. Like we would love to have a part of the game where you go into Friday the 13th and there's whether it's a menu or like a stylized area of the world, you go and there's like an old console, maybe it's unbranded, and you can actually play an older game on it, as like an homage, a throwback, and an Easter egg, a fun little thing.
Sure. And it could be because people have wanted a single player component for your game, but there's only so much money, there's only so much time. So that could be a way for people to have a small single player experience, or with the power of random generation with procedurally generated stuff, you can take a pretty small amount of assets and blow it up into a lot of content potentially. So you never know. That's awfully exciting. I'll put you in touch with those guys after the show.
Yeah. Get me in touch. We'll make things happen.
Yeah. So how did you get started in this whole video game development thing?
In video games, man, I remember I ever since I was a kid, my 4 or 5, I've been playing video games. Like my dad would hold me up. We'd go to grocery stores, and back then you had arcade games in the grocery stores right up at front. So, the kids can sit up there playing games while their parents are shopping. So I would sit up there and play games like Tempest and Asteroids and Centipede and Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man and stuff like that. So for a long time, I was just enamored with arcades, right? And then, I had the Atari 2600 at home, and I'd always been playing games, and that progressed all the way. I ended up living in Las Vegas, as a teenager and playing TurboGrafx all the time and Super Nintendo. And then I found out there was a game developer, a studio in Las Vegas. And I was just like, oh my God, I got to work there. I have to work there. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no schooling that says that I should be able. I mean, back then there was no way to get a game development, training, and I wanted to be a game designer, and I didn't know how to go about it. So I just went down to Westwood Studios, which happened to be in Las Vegas. They made games like Command and Conquer, Lands of Lore, Eye of the Beholder, like tons of games, right? And I showed up there, and they had a testing position open. It was a part-time testing position. I took it, and ever since once I got my foot in the door, and I was testing Command and Conquer and Monopoly on the Mac, way back when, must have been like 95.
Oh wow, jeez.
Yeah.
So how old were you?
95. Probably about 20.
Wow. Yeah, you look much younger.
Well,
you got a sweet bearded baby face.
Yeah, clean living and video games. That's what I achieved.
So 95, that was around, I think, when Splatterhouse came out on the TurboGrafx 16.
Oh yeah. Splatterhouse, always a big fave of mine. Like I would go any arcade that I found out had that machine. I would go there and I would try to beat it. When I finally got it for the TurboGrafx, I must have went through that thing 20, 30 times.
Yeah, I know. Why did we do it? I did it too. I couldn't get enough. But now when you go back and play it, you see that though there's some like pretty interesting level design challenges and stuff, it's kind of just like a walk forward and duck and kick game. And a crowbar or a
every once in a while you can pick up a shotgun.
Yeah.
A 4x4.
There's that guy with chainsaws for hands and a sack over.
Yeah, that with a sack head. Yeah, so that was to me, Splatterhouse was the closest to an actual Friday 13th game that I wanted to play.
Right.
But that wasn't Friday 13th.
Right.
So
they couldn't technically get the rights. So with these kinds of games in mind, you become a tester for Command and Conquer and Monopoly, and eventually you worked for Insomniac and EA and all these guys.
Yeah. So at Westwood Studios, I started designing levels and learning the editor. Like while I was in test, after hours, I would go out and I would talk to designers there, programmers, audio engineers, just anybody I could talk to and ask about their job, what they would do, right? And I would offer up my assistance with anything. Like, oh, you need help moving stuff down at the studio, because they filmed a lot of like full motion video stuff there. We had a green screen studio way back then. They had the FMV cutscenes in the Command and Conquer games. So I would go and I'd volunteer to move costumes around and clean things. It didn't matter. I would help anybody if they would share a little bit of the knowledge of what they did in the industry, right? And how they got in. And I just kept doing that. And eventually they started letting me build levels for like Red Alert, and Command and Conquer Soul Survivor online. It was like the first MOBA.
Wow, seriously, what year was that? Do you remember?
That was, I think, 97. It was a 50-player single. Everybody commanded a single unit and had these long battles. And it was way back when most people didn't even have an internet connection that would sustain the gameplay, and it was so simple, right? But yeah, I designed maps for that, and after a while, they started letting me do other things. Help out with the manuals for the games and the hint guides, and they started sending me to places when we were mastering Command and Conquer Tiberian Sun. They sent me to Alabama to ensure that the disc mastering process went well and that nobody stole the code. So, like,
really? So you're doing helping with get costumes on set 1 year, and then you're designing levels the next year, and then you're like a security guard for code for discs. The next one, was that unique? You think to that studio where they would kind of go by personality almost and go by your general work ethic, intelligence, ability to get stuff done, and not so much like putting you in a specific place where you had to stay. Like I imagine some other studios, if one of the testers was like, hey, can I like put a hat on this guy over here? Is that helpful during this cutscene shoot? They'd be like, get back to testing, you jerk. But like where you were at then, it sounds like they were really open to, at least for you. Like, did they let everybody do that, or were you someone they had a little more trust in, you think?
It definitely, I mean, if they trusted you, like this, most studios will promote from within, but but in my experience, back then, they Westwood put a lot of effort into helping people achieve their dreams, right? It was a very special place to be. And I'm so happy that I lucked out and ended up in Las Vegas with the studio there, because otherwise I wouldn't have had no clue how to get in the industry, and I would not have gotten my foothold, right? But yeah, they had, the testers would help out with tons of things. And as I leveled up and kept getting promoted, you know, I ultimately ended up heading up the console testing department, and we were doing like the PlayStation 1 version of like Doom 2000 and Red Alert and stuff like that. And so even back on the Sega Saturn, we were doing all that stuff, and the N64 Command and Conquer.
Wow, cool.
So they entrusted everybody to, if you wanted an opportunity to do something and then you were successful, you'd get another opportunity to do something else. And eventually I started dabbling in production work, and I went to another studio called iRock Games in North Carolina. It was a sister studio of Red Storm. And I worked on a game with Ozzy Osbourne there.
Whoa, what game was that?
It never shipped with Ozzy Osbourne in the title, and there's a story behind that. But it was called Savage Skies, and it ended up coming out on the PS2. And it was a flying creature combat game. Like there were dragons, demons, all sorts of monsters, but you would ride on the back of these dragons and creatures and shoot fireballs and complete missions and stuff, and doing aerial combat against other monsters and demons.
Whoa!
With Ozzy, and you're Ozzy.
How did that fall apart? That's so sad to hear that. End up eventually flying on that dragon and killing the demon.
So this is probably the saddest story in my career, because for all intents and purposes, should have been huge. The Osbourne, we signed Ozzy. We had a contract in place. He was going to play the game on the Osbournes. He was going to show the game before all the Ozfest shows, you know, like literally run it and run video in the background of him doing the songs. He recorded new songs with Black Sabbath for the game. And some of them have not even been released. Like they're just sitting there. They never got used.
Whoa.
So,
and you've heard them, I assume.
Yeah.
Good?
They were really good. They were really good. So all this was in place. Ozzy's going to be riding on the backs of dragons, killing all sorts of things. It's going to be on his TV show and whatnot. We have the game. It actually is pretty fun. It's probably a little too hard. But it was fun, and it was unique. And we ended up starting to run low on money, because we had a Beverly Hills office for some reason, for a small company, that did put these deals in place. But after we had the deals in place, they were just sucking money down, right? You know, so we were running out of money, and we needed a publisher, and we signed with this company called Bay Area Multimedia, BAM, back in the day. I think they did a game called Driven with Sylvester Stallone. And I don't know
the movie of the same name, I think, where he drives a car, and that's the whole movie. Just him driving a car and frowning. So
they did much else, and then they didn't want to pay for the other half of the Ozzy payment that we had already paid half of up front. So they're like, get Ozzy out of the game, rip him out of the game. And we're like, are you crazy? He's getting poised for the comeback. He has a show coming. The Osbournes is going to be massive. It's going to be huge.
Was this before the Osbournes actually came out?
Yes, it was right before.
Wow.
And they said, no, strip it out. And about 6 weeks after we stripped it out, we launched the game. And then a couple weeks later, the Osbournes launched. And, well, we weren't in it. And the game kind of didn't get a big push. They didn't have a good handle on the marketing side of things. So it just died and floundered. And we tried to port to the Xbox, but we ran out of money. And then I went back to Westwood Studios.
Son of a bee. That is what a amazing story, but a tragic story around how the people who don't get why a game is special, why it's important, but they do get that they want money, or in this case, don't want to spend money on like. Did they just not think Ozzy was bankable because Bark of the Moon didn't sell that well or something? Like, what were they? It's hard for you to know. I'm sure.
I'm sure all of them were suits. You know, like the decision makers didn't really get Ozzy in the first place. Probably didn't like that kind of music, and thought he was old and washed up. And honestly, he kind of was back then. If you remember the early episodes of Osbourne's, like he was a total wreck back then. And even when he recorded the audio for our game, so there were some things he couldn't say, like I remember we had some weird character names. Like Oculus was like a flying eyeball with tentacles, and he had small little wings, and he'd just roll around. His name was Oculus, and we had another one called Ray Slicer, which was a skeleton, kind of a skeleton pterodactyl, crossed with a buzzard, and we had a lot of weird shit going on.
Sounds good.
But he couldn't say Ray Slicer. He could not say it. Every time he'd come out, it would just be. And I was just like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? But he could sing it.
Really?
Yeah. Ray Slicer. And it would come out like silky smooth. And we were just like, what the hell? So some names he could say, and he was gonna voice all of the characters, right? So, you know, we'd go Gormag, Oculus, Ray Slicer. And it was like, as you scroll through the characters, it was odd because he'd say it, he'd sing it, he'd say it, he'd sing it. Because that's all we could get. And we only had 2 days in the studio with him, and we got what we got.
Wow. Did you ever hear how he felt about the fact that the game didn't come to be? Because sure, it was only 2 days for him, but have to imagine it might have been cool for him to picture himself riding a dragon, killing these demons, and singing Ray Slicer and recording songs. I mean, did you hear anything about his investment in the project and if he was sad?
After the fact, everything just kind of fell apart. Obviously, they were upset they didn't get the last half of what they thought they were going to get, and the game never came out with Ozzy's name on it. So I don't think he ever was told what happened until much later. I just don't think anybody bothered to say anything, or he might have been told and he forgot. But I remember I was watching a show. Jeff Keighley was hosting it. I think it was called Gamehead, maybe.
Sounds right.
On Spike. It was a long time ago, and I'm watching it, and Ozzy is at an EA Sports event in New York City, Times Square, for a launch of a game, and he's interviewing him, and Jeff asks about Black Skies. It was going to be called Ozzy Osbourne's Black Skies. And he just like lit up and was like, oh, I don't even know what happened to that game. and then they started talking about it, and he's like, oh yeah, I was riding on the back of dragons. And I'm like, holy crap. And like 4 years later, I see him talking about this game, and it turns on his head. Like, I remember now on TV, that was on the episode. And that was so I know he knows it didn't come out now.
Right.
Until then, I had no idea if he ever even thought about it.
And you saw him like light up. He didn't say like, we don't talk about Black Skies or anything.
No. He lit up, and he seemed genuinely kind of like upset because he was excited about the game at the time.
Ah, cool. Well, that gives me some hope. Because, you know, this is a very strange industry. You never know who you're going to bump into. You never know when suddenly the pieces will come together in such a way that just stuff gets made. Maybe he'll put in his will. And to Randy Greenback, you know, you get to make Black Skies now. Here's the demo tapes or whatever.
I'm sure he doesn't remember, but I remember vividly walking in the studio, and he came in with his handler. His handler's name was Tony. He walked in, and he started shaking hands, and like he shook my hand, and I'm like, hey, Ozzy, nice to meet you. And he just wouldn't let go of my hand. Like, I'm not even kidding. I am not even kidding. It's like this uncomfortable, like, let's keep, well, okay, yeah, nice to meet you. He's still holding on to my hand. I'm like, what's he doing? Transferring his demon powers to me? Like, he's just like, won't let go, looking at me and talking to other people while he's still holding my hand. And I didn't know what to make of it. And then later, you know, he's a great guy. That guy, Ozzy, has been through so much. But I don't want to say too much. But he started talking to his handler later after this like 3-minute long handshake about having horrible diarrhea.
Wow.
And I'm just like, wait, you just held my hand for 3 minutes, dude. The hell.
The closest I can think of I don't know if you know who Tommy Wiseau is. He wrote and directed The Room. I was on a podcast where he was a guest a while ago. I can't remember how that happened. I think I actually set it up, and he had a handler too. But his handler would just interrupt Tommy constantly to make sure he didn't say something awful, because it seemed as though Tommy was always on drugs. So I'm always confused when people have like, it's like a bodyguard for their words. It's like protecting them from saying stuff. That wasn't the case with Tony and Ozzy. It sounds like it was more like an assistant, someone who was just there to
an assistant, and maybe somebody that would ensure that Ozzy didn't have to do too much that he wasn't comfortable with, and
gotcha.
Probably to help him on the social side of things.
Right. Because it's awkward when Ozzy says, "Hell no, I'm not doing that." But when Tony steps up and says, "Oh, Mr. Osborne wrote these." Wow, pretty cool career you've had, and this is before you even got to Insomniac and EA. Right. Is that right? Wow.
Right. So
you went back to Westwood, right?
I went back to Westwood Studios, and I got back there probably about 6 months before EA had shuttered it. Shuttered that studio, and I ended up getting an offer to move out to EALA.
Okay.
And I worked on Command & Conquer Generals there, and that was back in the time when, man, EA was terrible. It was before EA spouse. Right. So the amount of hours that they had the teams working were pretty insane.
Really? Like you're saying like 50, 60 hours a week?
Like 12 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Wow. So that's over 80, I think, potentially.
Yeah. And under veiled threats of your job too. It just wasn't a healthy time in the industry. Like there was some dark times at night. We'd all be sitting around kind of taking bets who was going to be the first person to die on the way home. Like I'm not even joking. Like it was dark.
God. Wow.
Dark humor to get through the day.
Was anybody happy? Were your bosses happy? Were your bosses happy? Or was it just like, we need to make that money even though we're miserable for everyone?
Well, we were on a game called Command & Conquer Generals 0 Hour, which was kind of an expansion pack to Command & Conquer Generals, and it had a very short dev cycle. So there was just a lot of work that had to be done in a short period of time. I don't think anybody up the chain really wanted to have to do that. It's just the financial side of things probably forced everybody's hand down the chain. It's just bad decision making and planning from the top down.
And did you find that at that time at EA, like who was at EA at that point? It's funny. We actually last week had Rebecca Heineman, who worked for EA back when they were, making Commodore 64 games that came in what looked like record album covers. So she remembers EA when it was like young people who love to make video games, and who knows if we're going to make money. And
it was a very artist-friendly industry and a very artist-friendly company back then. But at some point, it became, totally biz. By the books, like decisions would be made based on spreadsheets. That saying, "Oh, is this game going to make enough or not?" Or when's the optimal time to ship this genre of game?
Sure. And so, how high up were you at EA at that point when you?
I was a game designer on that game.
All right. So fairly high up there, not like the producer, not the head guy, but one of the guys who's making creative decisions, or at least trying to.
Yeah, in my domain on the level design side of things.
So do you get the sense that once a culture of a company changes to be so money focused, making decisions by spreadsheet, that it's like, I don't know, like a runaway train that even the guy behind the wheel of the train, he can't turn it around. It's just what the company becomes. Yeah.
When companies get that big and leadership, it just kind of trickles down. That kind of mentality and those decisions all affect the next people down the line, and the next people, and the next people, and it snowballs into a very unhealthy work environment. Depending on the project you're on, if you're on a project that is really either in trouble or has a really aggressive timelines, then you're going to get the biggest brunt of the bad decisions that start at the top and roll down. Some games didn't have that kind of crunch. So, I mean, it's project by project. At our studio, it seemed like all the games were on fire all the time. Like they always had to hit deadlines and milestones and get the next trade show. And there's always something that needed to happen, and you needed to be there until 9 o'clock at night to do, or 12 at night to do.
My God, for it sounds like months, maybe even
months
years.
and months, almost a year.
Wow. Why do you think people did it? Why did they stick around?
I mean, video games are anybody who wants to be in games, it's their passion, it's their dream. They want to make games. They want to contribute to something bigger than themselves. They want to make entertainment that affects people, right? That's what I want. That's what I want to do on a daily basis. I want to make games that get people thinking, that, challenge them, let them have fun, let them escape a little bit and do something a little magical, that they'd never get to do in real life. And, at the core of it, you want it to affect them. And you will put up with a lot to do what you love, that I found, at least for me and a lot of people else in the industry. So when those demands come,
late 20s at this point?
Yeah.
Right. So
20s,
they hadn't burned you out quite yet.
No. No, and I didn't really, ultimately I never got burnt out. After EALA, I left and went back to North Carolina, and I got a job at Red Storm. And, I worked my way up there, working on the Rainbow Six series and Ghost Recon games, and even America's Army, unfortunately. What was that one again? America's Army True Soldiers.
Was
on
that
the
the
Xbox
game that the Army
360.
used to train, or at least get people excited about joining the Army?
To recruit, yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
What did you do on that one?
I was creative director on that one.
Cool. I mean, I've heard good things about the game. People join the Army for it.
Yeah, which, I am proud that the game was good. It was good for the time we had to build it. I am not proud of the fact that it was a recruitment tool and it let a lot of people into, it's always hard, going to a trade show and having a kid come up and say, hey, the games you made, they got me so psyched. I joined the military. I can't wait to go overseas and kill some people. It's like, this is not why I made the game, and it's kind of, how do you respond to that,
Yeah. So burnout wasn't the right term that I used earlier, but having experiences and having relationships with the developers, the publishers, and the games you're making that show you like where you actually want to go and where you don't want to go, because now you're independent.
Yeah, I'm indie. And now I can just pick and choose who I work with. I'm working on Friday the 13th with people I really enjoy working with. The guys at Ilphonic are amazing developers. They're out in Denver. They're really the workhorse that is pushing the game along. My friends at Gun Media, Wes Keltner, Ronnie Hobbs, Ben Strauss, and Chris Winfield, we all work for Gun Media, and we work with Ilphonic to make the game. And it's fun being able to choose who you work with and not have to worry about, I have to be in one set place at a certain time. If I'm calling a meeting, it's because a meeting needs to happen, not just because, some weird, this is our agile methodology. We got to have a daily stand-up meeting. It's like, no, like we don't have to do that. Let's just make games and have fun and ensure we do the best job we can, because this is the way it should be. We don't have to have some weird corporate hierarchy or anything like that.
Right. It's all about lack of trust, isn't it? When a company has all of these rules and set meetings and blah, blah, blah. Underneath all that, I think, is this fear that, like, did we hire the right people? Do these people want to work here? Or do we need to tell them what to do? Do we need to watch them all the time? Because they may just like not make the game unless we force them with fear, with some carrots at the end of the stick, some rewards. But for you and the people you've chosen to work with, making the game seems to be a reward in and of itself. Like you would do it.
Oh yeah. And like, even if this wasn't my job, I would be making games. I mean, matter of fact, I make games after I make games. So like I'm working on Friday the 13th right now, but I'm also working with friends on another game called Battle Sloths.
I saw that on Twitter a little bit. What is this Battle Sloths?
So Battle Sloths is, and you can check it out at battleslothsgame.com. It's like a top-down competitive multiplayer shooter. So everybody in the game is 4 players. You can play free for all or 2 versus 2. And you control a sloth, and you can pick up guns and wield them. And you can ride hoverboards, and you do battle in an arena against other sloths, and you're fighting over pizza, of course, because sloths love pizza.
How slow are these sloths on a scale from 1 to 10?
I mean, the gameplay is very fast.
Mm.
Like if you watch a video of this, it is like fast-paced, highly lethal combat. One shot, you're dead, and then you respawn, and you drop a slice of pizza. The other team grabs the slice of pizza, takes it back to their base because their goal is to form a full pizza pie, right? By killing all the other sloths. But it's super fast-paced, but it's actually playing very fast. Like these battles take years in sloth time.
Oh, got it.
But they resolve in about 3 to 5 minutes in our time.
Right. So if we were to watch the video in like actual time, it would be years because sloths move so slow.
Oh, moves so slow. They're very tactical, but they do it very slowly. But in the game, it's just high paced, fast action. It's almost like playing Smash TV versus other people.
Wow, sounds cool.
It's fun. It's dumb fun.
Well, it doesn't sound like it sounds like it's inspired. This feels good, and we're doing it. We're not going to overthink it. I have this. I'm picky about words because I like try to write them and stuff. Dumb is so like insulting, implying that the people who make it aren't necessarily smart. But smart folks don't always have to think in order to. And sometimes if they think, it slows down their inspiration instead of just going with feeling. So it sounds like you felt it and you did it, and it's a good time.
Yeah, it's a good time. And again, it's just a bunch of friends. A lot of people I used to work with at Red Storm, some new friends that I've met. We're all just getting together and we work on this after hours on our own time, and we're hoping to release it this late fall.
Oh, cool. On PC?
On PC, Mac, and Linux on Steam, and then hopefully port it to PS4.
Oh, neato. That's awesome. So you're making games all the time. And would you say where you're at now, we've talked a little bit about this already, but would you say there are some specific things that you learned at your time in AAA that you want to make sure you do not do now that you are not going to be forced to? Like, real quick, 2 things off the top of my head I wanted to ask you about. The 2 things you've already talked about are 2 of the things. People spending way more money than they should just because they can. They think, oh, I'm hitched up to this giant company, so the money's never going to run out. So we're Beverly Hills, and we're just going to have big lunches, whatever. And then the other side, the people whom aren't loving what they're doing it because they're afraid they're going to run out of money. So it's like the greed and the fear sides of things. When I talk to people in AAA, that's often what I'm most worried they're going to have to go through. So are those some of the things you went through that you wanted to avoid going through now that you're doing it on your own?
Yeah, I mean, you always have to worry about money and be responsible and try to not overspend. I mean, that's at any company, whether you're AAA or indie, right? Like at the end of the day, you're responsible for if you're in a position like I am, you're responsible for the people you're working with and their livelihoods. Like if you make bad decisions, it's not just you that are going to have to pay; it's them and their families and their friends and everybody around them. It becomes a hardship, right? So you don't want to make any bad decisions. And I feel like in big companies, there's too much of a disconnect between the people at the top, all the way and all the layers between them to the people who are actually building the game, the people that love to build games. And one of the biggest things I never want to forget is people make games. It's not some giant machine in a company that just cranks them out. Real people that are passionate about what they do, and they're doing it because they love to make video games. So you need to treat them like people. You can't have middle managers going to them and saying, well, you're just not hitting what I think your milestones should be, and your task lists aren't getting done on time when I think they should be done. So I'm going to put you on a performance plan, or you're first on the list to get let go if we run out of money, or layoffs have to happen, right? I don't want to ever think like that, because honestly, sometimes people aren't being used in the right way, in the right capacities, right? And so I could be wrong as a person who might be delegating tasks, right? I might have given somebody a task that doesn't suit them, and I'm misusing them, right? And so I always try to think, is the problem me or my decisions before I blame somebody else who's having a hard time or isn't doing as well on a game as I think they should be, right? And then I try to find other creative solutions to improve the process or make their job easier, or get them excited again, before I start thinking, oh, well, obviously we got to let those guys go, or gals or whatever. Like I don't want that to be the first thing I think about. I want to make teams work and build teams and have everybody have a good time making games, because that's what I want to do. Right. I'm not going to make a decision by the spreadsheet. I want to avoid having to have a hard talk with anybody if I can. And I'd rather build people up and motivate them than tear them down and let them go.
Sure.
So again, I guess you can boil it down to being a human being and actually caring about people.
Which sadly,
it doesn't seem hard, right?
it seems like, I don't know, common sense. But there's a lot of people, I think, who are attracted to the video game industry or to business because they're like, this isn't about people. This is about interacting with a thing, with a game, or it's about just making a ton of money off selling a product to a consumer base that will just buy whatever franchise they're attached to or something. And it's
not a game; it's a product on the shelf you're getting out on time.
Exactly.
And that's it's really scary to let somebody like that get into a position of power because they don't care about what you love. They don't care about the art form. They don't care about the gameplay or what makes what you're working on special. They'll make decisions based on the flavor of the month.
Sure. And those are the people who often fight the hardest to rise to the top. Right. They don't care about making a thing. They care about having power and
having the power and money.
Yeah. So you got rid of them. They're out of your life.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, but they can come from anywhere. I mean, people. You know what I mean? You just have to always like I was saying. I pick and choose who I work with, and if I don't like what I'm doing, I'll stop doing it and I'll go do something else. Sure. Like I have that freedom now, and I really appreciate it, and I'm happy I have it, and I want other people to have it too. So the biggest thing I always try to impart when I talk to people or mentor students or anything in the area, or I go out and talk to a school is really, there's really nothing you should be aggressive in. You shouldn't aggressively try to climb a ladder. Here's what you should be aggressive in. And the only thing you should be aggressive at is looking for opportunities to help others. That's it. If you do that, everything else falls in place. You're a good guy. You help people, you build them up, you pull them up, you push them up ahead of you. However you do it, you all get where you're going and everybody's happy and they'll be there for you in your time of need if it ever comes about. If not, you just did a great thing. You should feel good. Why does it have to be any more complicated than that?
Son of a bee. So now I want Friday the 13th, the game, to have a special Randy Greenback mode where Jason is swapped out for you. And instead of coming behind somebody with a machete, it's like, here, I bought you flowers. Heard you had a rough day. You know, we're going to lift it up. We're paying it forward. Like, how many times can you pay it forward in an hour? Because that would be a fun twist and a way to get around. But it is a little interesting that the guy who is making the Friday the 13th game also has this, like, loving, very empathetic, high up on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, you're in a social contract and principle. You're like this great guy, but you wanted to make a game about a scary serial killer.
I mean, it's escapism. Horror is kind of weird in a way. It's like you can explore the dark parts of humanity in a very safe way, right? You can be scared. You can, like, in modern times right now, like there's not a lot of people, at least here in the first world in America or anywhere, that really worries about their survival day to day. You could be homeless, you could go hungry for a few days, but you're probably not going to die, you know, like on average, right? There are people in really terrible situations that have to worry about their safety in inner cities and stuff like that. I get that, but in general, nobody's really worried too much about
not like in the caveman days or like the old west or something. We have infrastructures in place, homeless shelters, food kitchens,
there's enough safety nets there for you. So when you watch a horror film and you get scared, it kind of puts you in touch with that primal fear, you know. And even these survival games like Minecraft or anything like that, it's all about surviving, which we don't do, but we miss it. I think our brains, some part of us misses the struggle, and the trials that you have to go through to survive. So like when you're watching a movie or playing a game that's all about survival or horror or both in one, then it really starts firing off and engaging a part of your brain that's not often engaged anymore. So I think that's why people love it, and that's an interesting thing for me to kind of explore. So it's not just about the most grisly ways you can murder people. It's like hitting those feelings and letting people get in touch with something a little more primitive in them that is in a safe way. Like I don't think that our game's going to inspire anybody to become a serial killer or anything like that, because that doesn't work that way, right?
Well, I would guess that anyone whom would be inspired by your game to be a serial killer probably could have been inspired by, I don't know, a newspaper article or an Ozzy Osbourne song about
Anything. There's probably a mental illness that's already there that they needed help for and haven't gotten help for.
Sure. So tell us about the design of the game. People may already know, but they may not. And if not, I'd love them to know about it. How are you going to inspire that kind of survival instinct, that fight or flight, that sense of being hunted or being a hunter? And what does the hunter, when you get to play as Jason, what is he afraid of? What are his concerns? What kind of design elements have you put in there to put us in the places of these characters?
So Friday the 13th, the game is an asymmetrical horror game. It's a multiplayer game, and it's all online, right? So there are 8 players in the game. 7 of them are camp counselors trying to survive the night and live for as long as they can and escape Camp Crystal Lake, right? Jason's only goal is to kill everybody, all the other 7 camp counselors, as fast as he can, right? In the most grisly ways as he can. And you get XP and bonus points and stuff like that, which there's a meta game to the game. You can unlock more items and clothing and new Jason variants to play with and stuff. So the motivation for Jason moment to moment in the game is all about you're going up against lots of people in numbers, and they're spread out and they're accomplishing goals, and potentially you're going to fail at your goal to kill everybody because they're all working to all escape, and they might escape as groups or as individuals, and you don't get to kill everybody because that's what Jason thinks about. He wants to kill every horny teen at the camp. So on the camp counselor side, your whole goal is just to survive, right? So the core gameplay, I like to describe it as hide and seek plus murder. So you just don't want to be found. Like that's at its very base level. You're running around from place to place of safety, looking for items, trying to avoid Jason seeing you, because when Jason gets a beat on you, you're probably going to die. He is OP, and we're fine with that, right? Like, and it's kind of weird to say that as a game designer. Like, we don't want this game to be fair. Like, then it wouldn't be a slasher, like an homage to a slasher film. Slasher films aren't fair, right?
And that's why they're scary.
Yeah, and almost everybody's going to die, and maybe everybody dies. In our game, that definitely is the outcome that is most prevalent, is everybody dies or only 1 or 2 people escape. The other interesting thing about Friday the 13th, the game, is that as the counselors, you can work together, and there are alternate goals that you can work towards. You can repair a car and there's 4 seats in the car, meaning if you work as a team or a group, you can escape with 3 of your friends, and everybody survives, right? If you get out in the car. But at the end of the day, you only care about your own survival. So push comes to shove, the guy who's not running quite as fast as you right behind you, you're fine with him going down because that means you can escape.
Sure.
So it's like a cooperative gameplay.
And can you sabotage other people's attempts to survive in order to get away?
Sure.
Is there any? Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sometimes it happens by itself. Like you could run into a cabin. Jason's, like 500-600 feet behind you. You run in, open a window, then get under the bed, and then he walks in the door, looks at the window, and thinks, "Oh, maybe they jumped out the window and ran outside. I better go back outside." Then he starts scanning the room just to be sure, and then bam, somebody pops up behind him, opens the door, makes a noise. He turns around, and they go running out the front door that you had just come in. And meanwhile, you were there under the bed the whole time. He was about to probably inspect it and see if you were there, but another player happened about and probably is going to die now, but you get to live, right? And there's other times where you can set it up so that the outcome is, you're going to sacrifice somebody and trick them into kind of buying you some more time.
Well, I was going to ask, can you with headsets and whatnot, can you talk to other players and be like, "Oh yeah, bedroom looks safe, come on in," and then Jason's in there. Jason goes after them, and then you jump out the window. All right. So you're giving the player a huge amount of opportunity to be almost co-designer, as so many of these games, Rust and DayZ, is the way people play it that contributes to the design. It's almost giving them the toys, but then they figure out how to make a story with those toys that's compelling and fun. Risky though. Risky. You have a lot of faith in your players, it sounds like.
It can be risky. I mean, we're basically empowering the Jason player to drive the match, right? Every match. Like if Jason all of a sudden decides, hey, I'm just gonna spin in place and just stab at trees, they're ruining the match for themselves, and they're potentially reducing the tension for all the counselors in the game. So that's something that is inherent in an asymmetrical game. Sure. If you have a dominant force on one side that isn't putting pressure on the other players, then the match isn't as fun. But we have so many other things that counselors can be doing, and we track what Jason's doing. And if that player isn't performing as a good Jason, let's just say it's a good Jason, like trying to get out there and kill people and scare them and use the tools that we've given them to make these little matches into like mini horror films that you can play, then we kind of deem them like if they're not doing it. So then they don't get chosen to be Jason as often.
Huh. And how is it random, completely random who gets to be Jason other than that? It's
relatively random as far as who's going to be Jason. But if everybody's in a server, everybody's in a lobby, and you have that same 8 players stay in there, it's going to cycle through them. And then once somebody gets to be Jason, they're not going to be considered in the next round until everybody's Jason. Okay. Unless you've been Jason before and you've done these boring things, or you've trolled people and didn't actually drive the match forward, or you just, like I said, stab at one tree over and over a million times during a match, you're going to get dinged down. Eventually, you're going to stop being chosen as Jason.
Huh. Interesting. That sounds. I don't know of another asymmetrical multiplayer game anyway that's of this type, let alone one who would have this kind of progressive way of choosing who gets to be the more aggressive part of the asymmetrical relationship. I'm trying to think of, did Pac-Man Versus do it on the GameCube?
I think that was it was all local play, right? So you would pass the Game Boy around or whatever.
I think whatever Ghost ate Pac-Man got to be Pac-Man the next time or something.
Yeah. So we want to give everybody an opportunity, not just the best counselors. Like that, but that brings up a good point. Like we allow you. There's an epic win condition. If you work together, there's a little bit of luck and stuff. You can actually take out Jason. Like. It's like this generation's beating Mike Tyson in Punch-Out. Like it's that hard, it's that difficult, and very few people can do it. But if you can actually pull it off, it's like this giant moment in the game. So that is the thing that we're trying to build in.
Are you keeping that a secret? How you would go about that? I'm trying to think of how he died in the movies. He hates being in the water. He's like weak against water, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
Excuse me. Sometimes he's a worm. Sometimes he fights Freddy. But even Freddy, I think, how did Freddy versus Jason end? Freddy got his head cut off, but it was cool. Like they were still hanging out, kind of. So that wouldn't be it. Man, that's very exciting. I'm very curious to hear about what you came up with.
There's lots of ways you can trick a Jason player, and there's other items in the world that you could use to kind of throw him off his game and set him up for a kill. So we're going to let players figure that out, and hopefully when they're Twitch streaming it or playing doing YouTube Let's Plays and stuff like that, those are like the moments that they toss up there, and like they become like a gaming achievement, like a badge of honor.
Yeah, awesome. That's fun to think about. Knowing that the Kickstarter made $900,000. How much did you make again?
I should know the exact amount. $823,704, I think, and 20 cents.
You did know exactly.
Well, I have to update. We're now doing a slasher backer campaign, which is like our form of a slacker backer.
Oh, cool.
So being that Jason's a slasher, you want to back him up. So you can pre-order the game still. So we're still collecting more funds that are helping us make the game bigger for everybody at launch through the slasher backer campaign. And I think now we're at about $925,000 that we accrued. So we've unlocked more stretch goals. We have unlocked the ability to make 3 additional Jasons that the fans got to select. We actually did a vote, and they selected their fan favorite 3 that we weren't already doing. So now we have a total of 7 Jasons in the game that you can unlock and be.
I was not aware of that. Which are the Jasons, or which ones can you tell us about?
So the first three that we announced during the Kickstarter, we're going to do Sackhead Jason from part 2, Jason from part 3, and then also Jason from part 7. The first time Kane Hodder played Jason.
Oh, what was different about that Jason?
That Jason, he basically started out part 7 kind of chained under the lake. He's kind of rotted away. He's definitely an undead zombie with some supernatural powers at that point, as opposed to like Sackhead Jason in 2 and Jason in part 3, which were still human beings. They would try to run occasionally and stumble. They weren't adept. They weren't like this unstoppable ultimate predator. Yeah, they could be hit with a large like bat or something and actually stunned.
But part 7 Jason, Kane Hodder Jason, he's just a big zombie with a machete.
Basically, yes. You're not stopping him easily. Like it's going to take a lot more than hitting him with a frying pan or something.
So the other Jasons, can they get stunned but not killed?
I mean, we have to kind of homogenize some things.
Yeah, I figure.
So like they all Jasons can be stunned and potentially killed, but you have to go through a process, almost I like to call it a ritualized process. Like there are things that have to happen that allow you to go to the next phase of Jason and the next phase before you can actually kill him.
So it's like you have to get him wet, and then you have to like feed him after midnight, and then eventually, like there's all these rules to it that you're you're not going to explicitly state all those, but people will figure it out. That's really neat. And there's 4 more Jasons to come.
Oh yeah, there's I forgot to continue that thread. So yeah, there's a new Jason that Tom Savini is going to design, like that nobody's ever seen before, and that's exclusive to the game.
The Tom Savini.
Oh yeah, he's working on the game with us.
Cool.
So he's designing an all new Jason with a background, and like he could have his own film. Like he's developing him as if he could be in his own film, but he's getting a full treatment, and he's going to be his own very own thing, his own character. So and it's a really unique hook. So I hope a lot of fans enjoy that. Then the other 3 that the fans got to choose, they chose part 4. Part 6 and part 8.
No Jason X.
No. Oh, he was close.
Yeah.
There were a lot of votes for Jason X. It is quite clear that like we call him Millennial Jason. Like it seems like that's the movie that the younger generation has kind of glommed onto as far as the whole franchise. They don't go back past that. So a lot of younger people now. So that's their Jason. That's the Jason they know. So like I grew up with all of the Jasons. I watched all the movies and saw his transformation into what he is now, and then all the way to X. But that's all they know of Jason is Jason X.
I'm trying to picture starting with the one with the cyborg lady, and it's almost like Scream, like they almost know it's funny, but at the same time it didn't quite have that much like self-awareness. And it is just kind of a corny movie.
Yeah, he's Jason in space. Like, how did he get to space? Like, it explains it in the movie. Okay, but there's a lot of leaps that happen in there.
Yeah, a whole lot of leaps. I can't picture starting with that one. Then, of course, there's how many remakes they remade?
They did one reboot. They did one reboot, and then they did Jason Goes to Hell. That was 9. They did the reboot, and then Freddy vs. Jason, and then X.
I think the Supernatural guy is in a sequel to the reboot that I saw in theaters with like 3 people who were just screaming at the screen that it was so like dumb. Anyway, yeah. So a lot to be done with the future of Friday the 13th, but a lot of pressure to live up to it. Like those reboot movies, we were all super critical of them when we saw them because we knew what we wanted Jason to be and how we wanted it to feel, and it didn't feel it didn't meet our standard of our arranged relationship with this character that's been in our lives for like our whole life. So no pressure, right? Like how is that to have to live up to this franchise that you love and that so many other people love?
It's really tough because horror fans watch these movies obsessively. They'll watch them over and over again. They see things the 18th time they see it that you don't see, the first couple times you watch it, right? Or the casual person who's only seen it once will never remember the details they know about. But they're very vocal, and they want everything to be as exact as possible, right? Mm-hmm. And our team, luckily enough, is also very fixated, and they're horror fans from the old VHS days. So they like at Ilphonic, and Ronnie at Gun is just a huge horror nut. Like I like horror films, but like loves horror films. Wes at Gun as well loves horror films. The team at Ilphonic loves them. So they actually they'll go through and they'll scrub through the Blu-ray copies and DVD copies of the movies and scan in the backgrounds for items to put in the scene and build in 3D to have in our environment. Just because it's fan service, and if the more accurate it is, they want it to be accurate, and so do the fans. So it's like, great, it's happening. Like we just released a video showing Higgins Haven, which is the house and the barn that's off away from it. That basically part 3 takes place in.
Huh.
And it is pretty much dead on exact, right? Like to what you see in the films, but also the production shots that nobody really ever sees, but exist, like that the director would take of different shots and the cameraman would see. We actually have access to the parts of the house, some of the parts of the house that didn't get shown in the movie, so we know what they would have been, so we can actually make that and show people what they would have seen if they went into other rooms, right?
Wow.
And then there were still other rooms that were left undefined, and they weren't in the movie at all, and they don't exist in any production shots. There's no blueprints of them or anything, so we get to make those up. And the artists back at Ilphonic are like, okay, well, we'll let the context of everything we know about kind of inform what they'll be, but we can actually have some fun and leeway and create something new, a new experience that you never got to see in the movies. So
awesome.
That's kind of what this whole thing's about.
Sure. To give the fans a place to be in the movies. And how many different environments are you going to have? Is that planned out already?
Yeah, we just announced that. So we had only had enough. We didn't hit the stretch goals for additional maps, but so we were just going to have the Camp Crystal Lake environment, which is huge, but it's still one map, but with procedural elements. So every match it'll be different. So now at PAX East, where I got to be on a panel with you, which was fun. We actually announced that we're going to have a second map. And that all came about with Higgins Haven. The artists at Ilphonic and everybody else there were really busting their humps and working and passionately working in their own time to get it pushed far enough along that we could actually move some things around with the schedule and the budget, that we could actually then go and say, okay, now it can happen and it's not going to be a risk, because your love of what you want to do helped kind of get us to a place where it could happen with less money than normally it would take.
Wow, awesome. Yeah, so as you're doing it, it sounds terrifying. Like, sounds scarier than having Jason maybe. Well, that's not true, because that's pretty scary. Gonna get killed. But like, to have this project where so many people are invested in it, you've got a team, so you got to protect your team, but you also want to do right by the fans, and you don't want to run out of money yourself, and you don't want to like fail and die. I don't know. Are you in a rush to get it over with? So you're loving the process still.
Yeah, everything's going very well. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure from fans to do a single player component of the game, and we've thought about it. We've talked about doing it. We just don't have the funds to do it. So it's like if we have an investor that shows up and says, "Hey, we really believe in this. We want to invest our money to help make single player happen, and we want a piece of the pie at the end." That would give us the ability to say, hey, okay, well, we can now afford to make it, and maybe we'll do that as an add-on later, or maybe we'll push it out. Like, we have decisions at that point. We would love to make a single-player portion of the game, but there's a lot of things that fans want that we can't do for budgetary reasons. It's like, it's hard to say we can't do that. We would love to do that, but we can't, because I honestly think AAA has kind of made things harder for indie devs because their lack of transparency. Like a new Assassin's Creed, this amazingly deep game that takes 80 hours to do everything in, shows up every year, right? And it's relatively high quality. Players don't know how many people worked on that version of Assassin's Creed that year, but they now expect your game, even though you have a smaller budget, should just be as big and have all those features and all that deep gameplay, a single player component, a challenge mode, unlockable Easter eggs for days, and like they just expect so much because of this lack of transparency on these big budget titles. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're being super transparent with our team and our team to the public, is that we want them to have an understanding that games are hard. There's a lot of realities we have to weigh in and consider, from budget to just the time. It takes time to build things. You could have all the money in the world and not have enough time to make something.
Sure, absolutely. But it's sounding like, if I caught you before, the craftsmanship and the love that your team has made it possible for you to suddenly make this new environment, despite the fact that you're always on a time crunch. The talent and the love can make a big difference in terms of what's possible. It's one of those.
It helps without hurting. Like when it isn't like somebody at the top pressuring the team to actually get something done, and instead a love for what they're doing, it's the more wholesome way of getting more done for players.
Sure.
So and I'm glad we're at that. We're in that kind of mode, and that's happening. And hopefully it'll happen for other things in the game, but we can't guarantee it, and that's really hard. It's like, I would love to tell people, these are the things we're really pushing hard to make happen that we know you want. Because if you say you're trying to do it, the expectation is now that you're doing it.
Right.
So there are other things that we would like to get done, but we can't promise it, right? So it's hard there's so many cool things we're doing that I want to talk about. And I just can't, because people, there's somewhat of, I'm sure you've experienced it, there's a little bit of an entitlement in the gaming community, especially some sectors that, prefer not to be named.
Well, there's a trust me, I've had a run-in with them recently that was amusingly bad. And it's also online culture. Like, somebody, if you were in a room with this guy, he wouldn't say to you, "Where the fuck's my single player?" He'd be like, "Hey, can single player happen? Hi." But when you're online and you've got an anonymous avatar, you're not worried about looking like a jerk. You can really let your id out. All these games like Rust and DayZ and like your game, I think that they capture this primitive way of being that a lot of people just are on Twitter and on internet comments. They're in a competitive mode where they just want to kill the other guy by being a jerk to them. But in your game, you get to act that out with like strategy and potentially with teamwork, and it's a little more classy than just being a dink on the internet.
Hopefully, it's cathartic and lets out some of that poison and vile. Lets it seep out in a way that it doesn't get directed at real people.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way of doing it. But it's true. There's a lot of people who got into video games because they were like, here's a place I can get my aggressions out without hurting anybody. And then they kind of segue into being a jerk on the internet through that same sort of motive. They want to get their aggressions out. But now they're actually affecting people, but they forget that because when you're just staring at a screen, you sometimes forget. Anywho, I wanted to make sure I asked, and it's okay if we can't talk about it because you just said, like, there's things I can't talk about because I don't want to get people's hopes up. But I'm super curious about how a single player mode would even work in a game that's really designed from the ground up around the multiplayer asymmetrical experience there.
Yeah, and we're curious about it too. Like, we've had a lot of internal debates on the team. Like, what would single player even be in our game? We've talked about, hey, let's do an offline mode with bots. Well, our goals are very weird, and there's teamwork on the there's trickery that can go down on the counselor slide, and there's teamwork that can happen. There's lots of different goals you could be working towards, whether you're fixing the boat or the car, or you're trying to find the police call box and the power to repair the power, and then make a phone call to call the police so that you can escape with the police. Like, there's all these different ways you can do it, and writing the AI for all those different goals as counselors would be it's not like a shooter bot, that's relatively straightforward. It's navigating the nav mesh, it's looking for power-ups, it's looking for enemies to kill. It's very relatively rudimentary, right? Mm-hmm. But to kind of have bots that interacted and played the game and took into account all the things you could possibly be doing, it would be very cost prohibitive and very buggy probably, because it's just a huge undertaking. Yeah. And then Jason and his powers and abilities is a very He could be as simple and base as, hey, he's just a mindless AI running around and killing, but that's not Jason. Like Jason, if you watch the films, Jason will sit and stalk victims from a distance and wait until they see him, almost trolling them, and then so they start the chase. Like he wants there to be fear. He wants to encourage fear. But how do you make an AI understand? You've triggered somebody. They saw you. Now they're running, and like it's very complex. So, so we had talked about Alien Isolation and how good the alien is, and realized it took years to make that AI, and lots of people. Sure. We don't have that bandwidth on this game. So we started talking about, well, what else would be fun would be to recreate just small challenges, single player challenges where we can have less AI, but in a more scripted experience, and recreate moments from the films and let them be like a Hitman mission, relatively small in scope, but they can resolve in so many different ways based on your choices.
Huh. Cool. Yeah,
that would just have a ton of those, right?
Yeah. I think that we talked about Splatterhouse earlier, but one of the other games that came closest to giving you that slasher film, and come to think about it, Splatterhouse, you are the Jason, so it's not all that much like most of the Friday the 13th movies. But anyway, Resident Evil 4, when you first hear that chainsaw start up,
oh man,
that's kind of like a slasher film, and it's the best part of the game, in my opinion. And it only lasts for like 10 minutes or something. But that really, really worked. However, of course, that's one part of the game, and after that, it gets less like a slasher film. And it's also a huge budget game, which has all these other AI enemies, and you've got a gun. Like it wouldn't work to just do something like that for you, but it is like a contained challenge.
Right.
And I could see that definitely applying to what you're doing, that design philosophy anyway.
Yeah, and based on what you choose to do in that game, you can, he either is going to catch you can go through different routes, and you can finally escape and do what you need to do. And that's kind of how we would, it's very much like that. I mean, you're like laser pinpoint, like as far as thinking like, hey, that would be interesting. And we think that would be interesting too. And that's something that we had talked about being a cool moment as well. It's so uncanny. Like your head is like,
who, me?
Yeah. Like right here.
Oh,
Bam.
Yeah. It's so great to meet you, Randy. I'm very lucky to have met you at that thing. And now you're on the show. Yeah. Where else? What else should we talk about? We didn't talk much about what you did after. So you went to Westwood, you went to IROC to make the Ozzy Osbourne game. And then
back to Westwood.
Yep, and then you went to Red Storm,
and then to Insomniac.
And what did you do at Insomniac?
Insomniac, I worked on 3 different Ratchet and Clank games: All for One, Full Frontal Assault, and Nexus.
Oh, cool.
Which were a lot of fun. They were a blast to work on. Nexus was my favorite of the 3, but I thought the other 2 were unique in their own ways and a lot of fun to play as well. And then I was also working on a new IP there that still has not come out. It was so I can't really talk about that, but yeah, that was one of the big goals of leaving Red Storm, was to get to work on new IP and an IP I love with Ratchet and Clank.
Really? So I know you can't talk much about the new IP, but was that something you helped create?
Like Chad Dezern, who is the studio head in North Carolina at Insomniac NC, had this nugget of an idea, and getting to work with him and other creative artists and designers and programmers there on this new IP that I would love to see it come out, because it was really exciting, and really had a unique hook. So I would love to see it revisited, and maybe they will. I don't know, but yeah, that was one of the big driving forces in my choosing to leave Red Storm. I was creative director at Red Storm for a long time, and I had a lot of fun working there. But over the years, working on the same kinds of games in the Tom Clancy franchises and America's Army kind of took its toll on my mental state, as far as like all the games are always about war, in undeclared wars, usually overseas, operating secretively and taking out, deciding, like, it's like had elements of empire building and like stuff that just didn't align with what I wanted to be known for. So I had to I started having a crisis of conscience in some ways, and decided that it's time to start moving on from Red Storm and get away from these games that are all about murder and start exploring other things, like murder as in through war.
Right. Through murders that are happening right now.
Yeah, and
by government, people are making money off these other people. I
exactly.
mean, Jason, scary. He's not real, so that's okay.
Yeah.
War is quite real.
War is real.
Yeah,
there are people who are dying, and there are wars happening for reasons that I definitely wouldn't agree with, and I don't want to help inspire people to go to war. Because I'll say this right here: like, there's a lot of people that will say, "Hey, video games can cause violence; they inspire people to violence." I don't believe any of that. I mean, there's so many studies out there that have proven it does not. Right? But what video games do, just like any other medium, whether it's books, film, music, or whatever, they can affect your worldview.
Sure.
Right? And they can shape it. And games that, like Call of Duty, that kind of show a very sanitized version of war, a very heroic, rah-rah, patriotic version of war, kind of set people up to want to be. It's the G.I. Joe thing. I want to grow up and be the super soldier. I want to go over and fight for my country. But things in the real world are far more complex than that. And there are civilian casualties. There are horrifying things that happen to the environments the wars take place in. Obviously chemicals are used and radioactive elements are used. And there's a legacy that real people have to pay for those wars that were fought in their country for whatever reason. And I, and that's something that I don't want to inspire or help anybody think is right or something they should do with their life.
Sure. You don't want to contribute to a war glorifying culture.
Right.
And more power to you on that. And I think there's a huge difference, just like you said. Everything affects us psychologically. Like what I ate for breakfast today will affect me 0.001% psychologically. So everything I put into my brain does something in there. Very few things could probably turn me into a serial killer. But if I did nothing but embed myself in a war glorifying culture for 50 years, I would be a different person.
It's okay. Yeah, you might be okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So then you went to Insomniac.
And I got to have fun and just make games that were far more whimsical.
Yeah.
And then even then I was like, well, the actual player verbs that you're given are, run, jump, shoot. It's all coming down to shooting. And I kind of wanted to experiment with other things. So I actually, with a couple friends, formed. I left Insomniac and I helped form a game company that only did games for change, like games for social good and empathy games. And I got to make some games and use my, what I've been doing, what my whole career has been about, like game design and bringing experiences to players and trying to tackle different subject matter and trying to make games that got people thinking and debating, about real things in the world.
I'd love to hear about some of those games. What the heck did you make?
So there was a trajectory. Ultimately, Relevant Games is not really a thing anymore. We got to work on 3 games, and I had plans for a whole bunch of others. But we started out relatively tepid, just trying to kind of gauge how are we going to go about doing this? Because when you make a game with a message and with some meaning in it, people might think it's edutainment, right? So you want to ensure that whatever you're building, and we did definitely, was compelling and was fun by itself, and that we weren't teachy or preachy, at least. So we wanted to be a little more subversive in our messaging and deliver it in a more covert way so that people wouldn't perceive it as an edutainment game or a preachy game coming into it. So they'd even just get in the door, because that's the first challenge. It's like getting somebody interested to play the game. Sure. So our first title was called Scrap Squad, and it took on the very tepid subject of recycling and environmental awareness, right? So we knew it wasn't a very, it wasn't like this, like there's not a lot of debate around recycling. It's generally a good thing.
Sure.
Right. So, but we knew that was a good place to start so that we can start trying, well, what are we going to do in the grand scheme of things to draw people into the game? So one of the things we did with that game is we put you in the role of the bad guy, which is inherently more fun. So you were an evil genius in Scrap Squad, and you happened to be more of a bumbling evil genius, and your evil lair just happened to be under a landfill. So you weren't the big, huge like James Bond villain, you were kind of like on a lower rung.
Is this before or after Despicable Me came out?
I think this is after the first one.
Right, got it.
So
So
before the sequels.
gotcha. So you're that villain, but you're on top of a landfill. So you want to recycle, so you don't have to live on top of garbage.
So your whole goal, you want to destroy society and take over the world and enslave humanity. But unfortunately, since you live under a landfill and you're broke, you have to start somewhere. So you start recycling to collect funds you need to upgrade your lair and eventually, shoot a satellite into space and be able to dominate different cities around the world and stuff like that. And but to do that, you have to recycle and do good to be evil. So we thought that was a kind of a compelling angle to go after, and the whole game was it was an iOS and it was a mobile title, and it was all about sorting mechanics. So you'd have to sort like different recyclables. There's some things that people don't know are recyclable, and there's some things that they think are recyclable that really aren't. So that was one of the things that we were trying to help people with through this sorting game, but it was all about recycling this stuff and putting it into these what we call rebots. They were like these little robots that had personality and stuff, and they each took a different kind of material that you could sort through as they come down from the conveyor belt, and you sort it into their things. But you're buying upgrades for them and trying to turn them, into more effective recycling units so that you can eventually take over the world. So it was like I said, it was super tepid. But our goals were to kind of ratchet things up and take on loftier subjects, more critical things. And like the second game that we did took on the meat industry and factory farming in general.
Like Food Inc. stuff.
Food Inc. stuff, yeah. And it touched on like unethical treatment of animals and stuff like that. And how, it's just a vile industry. It's very greed centric. Factory farming is probably one of the most, people don't even realize how much damage it does. Like the pursuit of like the cheapest meat possible is destroying the environment, making people sicker, causing all sorts of super bugs to be developed because there's an overuse of antibiotics and just tons of stuff that's happening on these farms with these animals. So, and it's contributing to the unhealthiness of the environments around the farms, but also, you're eating meat where these animals, you're consuming all these antibiotics that have been built in their system. And now they're starting to be, all the different strains of all these, not just diseases, but like infections are not treatable by antibiotics anymore because we're overusing them on the farms. That's going into our systems and bugs are becoming resistant.
And the people who run the farms know this.
Oh yeah.
But there's an endless supply of money to be made. And they could be rich, but they don't want to be rich. They want to be super rich, and they want to be richer than that after that. So,
and it just when does it stop? So with that topic, we made a reverse tower defense game called Fat Chicken. And baked into the mechanics are pretty much the whole meaning of the game. So, and again, we also went with what we thought worked on Scrap Squad. We let you be the bad guy, right? So you're running the factory farm, and you have so many animals that you're going to have for each stage. And you have so much money, which we called murder bucks, in the game, and you would have so much murder bucks to start, and all the animals would come out of their pens and start their walk to the slaughterhouse, right? And you got to keep them. You got to build towers that feed them, water them, genetically modify them so they have extra limbs because it's all more meat. Pump them full of antibiotics so they don't get sick and die on their way to the slaughterhouse, and keep them alive just enough so they can get there without dying, so that you can process them, turn them into meat, and hit your meat quotas for the level. So it's all about like maximizing your money and the animals that you have, and pumping them as big as possible without getting them too sick. And you got to hire factory workers. You want to get them there faster. So there's prodders you can hire. There's all these. There's even like units that you can hire at the slaughterhouse that well, actually, if any animals don't quite make it, they'll go out with like a scoop, like a lift, and scoop up the dead animals and take them in anyways. But that's like an upgrade for your slaughterhouse. So like everything in the game kind of spoke to the hyper focus on greed and the unhealthy, unsanitary nature of the whole process of farming animals for for cheap consumption of meat for everybody in this one little game called Fat Chicken. And
Nice. So I write about video games sometimes. Destructoid.com. It's a fun website. I didn't hear about any of these things. Gosh darn it.
Yeah, we tried. We tried to get the word out about them. And some copies were sold. They weren't huge hits, obviously. Otherwise, I'd be still making games like that.
Sure.
And we had another game, the third one that ultimately released, took on the NSA and the loss of privacy through like a fun little management sim called Freedom Flock, where like basically it's like flash forward 10 years from now, the NSA is in everybody's lives. They're monitoring every piece of information that goes anywhere, and you start a company that basically, let's go back hundreds of years to delivering messages by pigeon, and you're running pigeon coops and training up pigeons and sending them out to deliver information and materials and different things to different people. People hire you because they can keep their information safe. So if they want to transport their health records to somewhere else, they can do so without the government involved. So, and you would buy coops in these areas. It was kind of like Sim City or like a railroad tycoon kind of simulator or something like that. That also had this like focus on events that were happening in reality here in the real world, where the governments are just trying to sop up as much information about you as possible.
I mean, these all sound like things that could have made the New York Times, could have been talked about on TV. These are subjects that are so close to the hearts of so many adults who have money and who have iPhones. So they all could have been hits. What do you think happened? Why didn't they take off?
I don't, obviously we were just, these were our first attempts. Like, I'm sure we, through each one that we built, we learned more about how we could have made the last ones better, and we applied it to the one we're working on now and the one we would be working on next. Right. So like, I think it's just, honestly, I think people, when they want to escape and play something, they don't want to engage with reality. It's escapism. Like, media usually tends to be something that you want to have a fantastical experience, or, forget about something for a little while you watch a movie. People want to escape their lives and not have to think for a while. So I think these kinds of games, I think we started solving some of the problems and found good approaches to get more people into them. But I think there's a lot of learning that still has to happen. Like games like This War of Mine, huge game like that. I'm sure you've played it or heard about it at the very least. And same with your viewers. And that's an amazing game. Those are the kinds of games that I was hoping to eventually get to as we leveled up. Like the next one that we would have worked on took on oligarchy, oppression, and systemic poverty, and how hard it is to escape poverty once you're in it. And it was a laser focus on, and through platforming game mechanics, about legacy, like your generation, with every generation getting a little further than the last one, but having to stand on the shoulders of the last ones to get that much further. So paying it forward. And I'm still working on that game right there on the side. And hopefully get that out someday. So I'm still doing games for change. It's just they don't pay the bills. So, so
not yet, anyway.
Not yet, but hopefully down the road, as our medium matures and as the audience matures and everybody is more open to new types of gameplay and new types of subjects that to take on, hopefully that market is there and people want to do more and are ready to experience different things in games.
And if these were all mobile games, is that right?
The first one was entirely mobile. Fat Chicken is on iOS and on Steam. So you can play it on Steam. Freedom Flock was going to be also iOS and Steam, but the goal was eventually to start releasing the games on console and on every platform. As we kind of built the team up and built up notoriety and got more interest over the years. Like, we were trying to take a very smart long-term plan with it. We were backed by a media company called Scripps, They own a lot of newspapers and satellites in space, and they believed in it. They wanted us to do well by doing good in the world.
Sure.
And kind of inspire thought, debate, and discussion through the games we were putting out. And they were happy with our goals. They ended up merging with another media conglomerate, and that one wasn't so keen on having this weird game division doing games for change games. And they're like, wait a second, we're merging. We need to start lopping out some of these things that aren't showing a huge profit right now.
Sure.
That was the end of Relevant Games, but that was not the end of my passion for delivering these kind of experiences to audiences. So
yeah,
there'll be more.
Awesome. And I want to compliment you. I think it is so smart to, like, the reasons you said that it maybe didn't do well is because people don't want that kind of experience. They want escapism. But it sounds like you did a great job in making it a fun escapist. We all curious about what it's like to be the bad guy. So anyone, any kid, any adult, you say, oh, you get to be the bad guy in this game, they're automatically curious. Right. And it is an escape. You are getting to be something you're not. I'm personally, not having played the games yet, just hearing about them, I think it's this iOS market and Steam too now, where it is such luck of the draw. Mm-hmm. Like, is Flappy Bird pretty okay game? Yeah. Was that really the best game to come out in that couple months? Probably not. But it got into some algorithm, so people discovered it, so people talked about it, so people discovered it, so people talked about it. That just didn't happen for Fat Chicken, but it could have. And maybe it still will. It's still on the store.
Yeah, it's still on the store, and hopefully people pick it up and check it out. And I hope it inspires other game developers to say, okay, well, I make all these games, whatever they are, they're all about entertainment and pure escapism. Maybe I should use my talents and what I do every once in a while and do a game that actually could make an impact on people and make the world a better place. Like, there are kids nowadays that are going to be policymakers in the future, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, I could talk about this for days. I think we need activism takes place on so many levels, mm-hmm. and I really wanted to make I want to make still activists that get people thinking about new ideas and new ways society could form around. Sure. These new ideas, so they're a little more wholesome and not so. Honestly, I'm probably more of an anarchist than anything. Like not like a punk anarchist, like burn it all down, but more like people don't need governments. They need small groups of themselves coordinating things, and things could be shifted and managed by smaller groups so that nobody can become these, oligarchs, essentially, where they have their fiefdoms, whether it's in education or where they basically run the show in their region of the world, call the shot with other people I would like to inspire new ways of governments could be organized and affecting policy in the future. And one of the ways you can do that through is entertainment. And I would like to do that to help empower the people who are on the front lines right now, like putting their bodies on the line out, protests and stuff like that, and actually protesting wars and just injustice in the world anywhere. Like, there's so many horrible things that are happening right now that real people have to go and put themselves in danger and put themselves at risk of being arrested or getting arrested. And we need people in other areas of the world that can influence others and inform other people thinking about it and do so that, in 5-10 years, those changes that they're fighting for on the front lines as activists and protesters can actually happen, because the next generation realizes, yeah, that's not right. And the only reason this shit exists is because people in power want it because it benefits them to keep their whole everything the way it's structured now. And and it should change. And I think games can be a huge facet of that, especially since nowadays games are like this generation's movies, honestly.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know a kid who doesn't have a tablet or a phone or an iPod, even on iPods, where they don't know what the point of a TV is. They're like, they have everything right there. And you were trying to speak to people through that vessel, and you still could. It's something to do with your life, right? Like, we're gonna die.
It's a little walk here.
I've got like 40 years if I'm lucky.
Yeah, I'm hoping I have like 40 years.
Yeah, so maybe we can do something that actually helps people in the meantime. Wouldn't that be good? That's why I like doing this show, so people can get to know people like you I hope is useful and helpful.
Yeah, I hope people want to know me. I hope people like me. I don't know.
Oh, they're gonna love you. They're gonna love you, Randy. How do we have 1 minute left? Dang, that went fast.
Man, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. People can find you on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at RandyGBK.
And also, Friday the 13th game is Friday 13th game, not Friday the 13th. I made that mistake first time I tweeted about it. Friday the 13th game. Any other place they can look for you?
I think the best place to start is f13game.com. That's our website. There's a lot of information there. You can also, there's links to our Twitter, our Facebook, our Instagram, our forums on there. And our slasher backer program. So like if you love Friday the 13th or you want to see asymmetrical multiplayer games, grow and flourish and support us, and we'll make the game even bigger for everybody. And day one, that we don't want to have to do DLC. We don't want to have to, plan for, short-term quick turnaround sequels or anything like that. Like some companies do. We would like to make the biggest and best game possible for everyone from day one. But that takes time and money, and that's what we're working on. So if they go to our website, they can support the game and help it grow. And the next thing we're going to add, I think we're about $500 away from 3 new counselor class types.
Cool. Wow, that $500.
Yeah, I mean, it was $50,000 when we started working towards the goal. Now it's like $500 left to get there.
So you're so close. And I'm kicking myself now. I had intended to ask you if it has been tough to make decisions around how much you want to stay true to how corny the original movies were. Like, I was expecting you to announce like sex scene mode, like or boobs mode coming. I think it's Friday the 13th 3 where I'm mixing that up with Silent Night, Deadly Night. Anyway, thinking about softcore porn scenes in slash.
I mean, there are in all the Friday the 13th movies. There are some softcore moments. There's a lot of nudity. There's a lot of corniness and campiness.
Yeah,
so
but
we want some of that.
Some of it,
but we want people to be scared more than laugh. So those moments can happen. Like we were talking about earlier, the tools are there for people to actually experience those things. But they're not the focus. The focus is when you're a counselor, we want you to be scared. We want the fear to ratchet up over and over and over to the point where you're just like on the edge of your seat, like oh God, just kill me now. I'm like, just get it over with.
Sure. Wow.
Yeah. But it's there. Like thematically, all of our camp counselors, the classes are based on the tropes from those horror movies. There's the edgy guy, who's good with, fixing vehicles and mechanical stuff. All right, the motorcycle, he's got his leather jacket, he's got that hairstyle. We have the girl next door type, we have the nerd, the jock, the preppy guy. So they're all based on like sometimes even high school kind of like classes,
Cool.
Different cliques in high school, but they're horror tropes essentially for
Sure. So there's a little bit of that flavor in there too.
Right.
Well, I would have wanted to talk about it more, but I forgot. Now we're late. So I'm findable at Tron Knots on Twitter. That's where I am there. This show can be watched later, youtube.com/Supholmes Show. You can listen to it later on Libsyn and iTunes. I think that's it.
That's it.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
See you later, Holmes.
Bye.